All right, it's Dean. Going to try to get this going. I don't know if it's working right or not, so try to be patient with me and I'll be patient with you. Yeah, it looks like a couple of people are trying to get on right now. So we're going to just talk about the Dawgs and everything that's going on. And there's plenty going on, that's for sure. The SEC today announcing that there would be no pro days, there would be no football, just generally speaking. So it's just one of those times where we're just gonna have to try to get through this together, and we'll talk about stuff other than just what is not happening. Like we know that y'all are not idiots. We know that there's no football in the near future at Georgia. But the question is, what can you do right now to get ready for when football will inevitably come back? Because it always comes back. If you've got questions, go ahead and ask them. I'm gonna try to talk as long as I can just to keep y'all interested. As you can see, I'm doing this with my phone, which is a disaster, and we're just trying to get through it right now. Because believe me, there's plenty to get through, and right now technologically I'm having to struggle here at my house. I mean, keeping the kids most of the day is not an ideal thing, but if you've got questions, go ahead and fire away. So the biggest thing is that we know that this Georgia team in one way or another are working probably. And the question is, how are they working? What are they doing? How is the team organized right now, if in any way? I mean, they're not supposed to be organized. So my suspicion is that they're not organized in a standard way. But are they getting together and throwing the football? Are they working? Are they working in groups? Are they how are they getting through this time? They've got to be bored half to death. It's just a different time for sure. I think everyone knows that's watching this right now, and will watch it here in the near future. But I want to get this description right. See, what happens is you think you're streaming and then you're suddenly not. It's pretty annoying. It's pretty annoying. But let's get through it. Ask me questions. So I think right now you're looking at a situation where we're probably still going to have the football season in September. We are not certainly going to have the football season starting in September. If you were to say to me that, see, that's what I'm talking about. If you were to say to me that, we would not have Georgia, Florida, I'd be a little surprised by that, because that's so much later in the calendar. But everybody really does need to pay attention and do what they're supposed to be doing. We can whip this and be done with it pretty quick. If not, you're going to have more of these, just ridiculous. If you want, I will call it. You're going to have more of these ridiculous chats with me where nothing good comes of them. It's just me trying to hold the phone because something else is taking up the tripod that's not working, and this, that, and the other. So we're just going to carry on. So, news today that Georgia's going to cancel graduation. I said, and I should not have said this last night, I said there was going to be there was a curfew in Athens. That is not in place right now. I think it's something that people are kicking around. You see what's going on in New York. So that's not ideal either, but we will certainly get through this and get to a season. I sort of wonder if they're going to play Virginia. We have a conference call tomorrow with the commissioner of the SEC, and they're not going to really. He's not going to, tell us something that we don't know the answer to. I don't think. I mean, this is going to be one of those things where everybody's going to have to get through a lot of. I'm not sure the answer to that question, including me. But I mean, if you start getting too deep into the year, you're not going to have revenues from games that you don't have. I mean, whether you're talking about tickets or you're talking about television. I mean, television is the thing I think that's a little bit freaked out right now, because they've spent millions and millions of dollars to broadcast these games, and they're not being able to broadcast them. I mean, I'm broadcasting. That's y'all's choice right now. But that Virginia-Georgia game is a big deal. The Alabama-Georgia game is a big deal. So, I've never seen anything like this. I mean, I'm going to talk a little bit right now about the Arkansas game in 2001, when that was just after 9/11, and that was really a frightening time for all Americans. I think y'all remember this well. But there was no certainty. I mean, Georgia was supposed to play Houston the week of 9/11. They had just lost to South Carolina in a nail-biter, really a game they really gave away. But that Houston game, after 9/11, I mean, I remember where I was and so forth, but after 9/11, people took a little bit of time before they started canceling. It wasn't a certain cancel. It wasn't a real quick cancel. And as the week went on, it became pretty clear that they were not going to play the games. After that, the question was, are they going to play sort of any games? When are we going to get this started again? Georgia hosted Arkansas. I would have to go back and look up the date, but it was still in September. It was a hot, muggy night game when they played the Hogs, and soon after that, things got halfway back to normal. But the important part is that sports really is such an escape for all of us. I mean, it's my profession, but for all of y'all watching, it's how you get away from the kids. I mean, and right now, y'all need to get away from the kids. I know that because even though I take care of my kids a lot during the week, I'm taking care of them for 12 hours now during the day. And I'm going to tell you right now, that is some serious competition right there. Why can't you get me my drink right now? Why is, this, that, and the other? Why are you eating your poop? All that sort of stuff. But I don't know. I mean, I think that 9/11 is a good way to think, how we're going to move forward. It's going to be a lot slower than 9/11, getting back to things. But someone was asking earlier about Todd Monken's offense and the questions about how, what to expect. I would certainly expect more explosion because. And to the left over here, by the way, is my board. I'll show it to you sometime when I actually have a functioning camera, not a cell phone. But you've got several playmaking quarterbacks here. Not that Jake Fromm wasn't. He was a very good quarterback. He was not what I think of as a playmaking quarterback necessarily. Jacob Eason was, but Jacob made mistakes. You've got Newman, Mathis, Beck. People are kind of discounting Bennett. That's fine, whatever. But you've got some playmaking quarterbacks that can get the ball. You can push the ball down the field a little bit more. And because of that, guys like Demetrius Robertson, certainly George Pickens, let's see what's Marcus Roseman going to be like, Jermaine Burton, guys like that, Justin Robinson. What are you dealing with when you get a playmaker who can get down the field, be explosive? That's what a lot of people wanted to see. That's what G-Day was officially canceled today. But that's what G-Day would have provided you a look at, where is this offense going and what should we expect from it? You've got the offensive line. I want to hear about the offensive line. They're loaded up. They got plenty of players, okay? They got plenty of players. They got 16 offensive linemen that will be on scholarship. I have what are called 2-dot players and 1-dot players and no-dot players. They got a bunch of 2-dot players, which means top 100 players. Almost all of the 2020 class is 2-dot except some of the offensive linemen. So you've got what you need on offense. They should be more explosive, no question. But how's it going to be for Blaylock to come back? Is Matt Landers going to become more consistent? Does Demetrius finally break out and have a big season? That's a good question. I mean, all of these are good questions that right now we can't know the answer to. I mean, I'm just looking at Mikal Sherman, who, when I saw him play, was his first time coming back from a knee injury. How will Mikal come in and play? these are all good questions that we won't yet know the answer to. And I do think that they will be pushing the ball down the field more and more. No question they're going to run the ball. I mean, Kirby is never going to get away from the run. That is going to be something that he does. I mean, that's what Georgia is. But Georgia, under Mike Bobo, if you remember very well, ran it and then threw it over the top. So you can do both. I mean, that's completely acceptable to do both. But we've become fascinated with pass first offenses. That's not the only way that you can win. That LSU did that last year and Clemson the year before. Alabama and Georgia the season before that, they weren't exactly, throw it all over the place teams. They were run first teams. And so you're not going to have Georgia change completely. They're going to explode down the field more. The question is, which of these quarterbacks gives them the best chance to do so? You would think it would be Newman, particularly now that, you don't have a spring practice they've not canceled spring practice that I'm aware of. They've canceled G-Day. That's not the same thing as canceling spring practice. Spring practice could become summer practice. Spring practice could become July practice. That's, folks need to remember that. But when you see these quarterbacks, Jamie Newman certainly can run the ball a lot better than Jake could. Dwan Mathis, who thankfully will be back, certainly can run the ball better than Jake. Carson Beck, much more athletic than y'all realize. Carson can run the ball very well. That's not necessarily what you want your quarterback to do, but you do want your quarterback to have the capability to run the ball. Jake, it just wasn't in his repertoire. It doesn't mean he's a bad player and I'm not running him down. I mean, he would say that. He did a good job in his freshman year, of running the ball well when they needed him to. But this is going to be a more dynamic offense for Georgia. It's going to look different than it has lately. But the principles of football don't change because you throw the ball more often or more often down the field. You still have to block. You still have to run. You still have to tackle. If you don't do those things, you're going to lose. You're going to get blown out. Clemson has had its style of offense this entire decade. Now that it's in vogue, everyone is forgetting how they got their ass whipped at the beginning of this decade. For the first 5 years of this decade were not a lot of fun for Clemson fans. So what they've done is they've recruited to what they've got, and they still run the ball effectively. ETN, all of these folks that they employ. Clemson has recruited very well. They've not recruited to the level of Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State, but they are getting better at that. So we'll see what results they'll have moving forward. What Georgia now is in year 5 of Kirby, it seems hard to imagine and remember that Kirby started this thing in 2016. I mean, it's really, we have fast forwarded in time, but this program is loaded up with kids. Right this moment, they have 85 kids on scholarship. I keep it, this is to the second, but they know what they're doing on scholarships. People don't need to worry about scholarship numbers. But, bringing in the 22 guys they brought in, plus, Newman as a transfer, that positions them to continue to move forward as one of the best teams in the country because they're recruiting so well. I mean, you look at what they have done over the last 4 cycles. Take out 2016. You look at the last 4 cycles. Georgia, number 1, 2, or 3 in the country, and they've had 2 of the last 3 have been the number 1 class. Now, you do need to produce championships at some stage. No doubt about that. And in 2017, an SEC championship is certainly a championship. But bettors see this season as relatively wide open in the SEC in a way that it has not been lately. Last year, Alabama was an overwhelming favorite because of Tua. Tua has durability issues. Some of us said that for a long time. But this is one of those things where the league is seen as pretty open, and bettors think that it's Georgia, Alabama, the Gators, LSU, and then kind of everybody else. But the West looks really jammed, whereas the East, of course, is Georgia and Florida. So let's see how it plays out. Or if you're asking me who is going to win the Georgia-Florida game, I'm going to tell you Georgia because I've seen them I'm on the field for these games, and Florida's level of kid is a little bit lower than Georgia's, and you can feel it. And for all the discussion of how good Dan Mullen is as a coach, and he is good, Kirby's not bad either. And I think, folks, because someone's a good recruiter, there's just like this thing where they can't be a good coach. Kirby certainly makes mistakes, and if you want to see mistakes, you just watch the beginning of this video. But over time, the results speak for themselves. I mean, there's not a lot of losses that have been coming through this program, and when the bulk of the losses have been against the number one or a top 5 team, that tells you a lot of what you need to know. They need to win those games for sure, but Alabama needs to win those games, and so does LSU. I mean, those are huge games, and you're not always going to win them. It happens. You lose sometimes, but I mean, they got to get. The 17 team had plenty of seniors. This team will have 17, and I mean, these are rough numbers because you got McKitty and Newman in there, and you've got some guys like Rochester would have been gone typically, but he's a holdover here. So these numbers can change slightly from what I've got, but they basically are going to have 17 seniors. That is a decent amount of seniors. This team, the program is pretty balanced on the numbers. You only have one class with over 22 kids, which is the I want to make sure this class up here, the 2021 class, which they just signed. That's not surprising. Freshmen, of course, we don't know what that will be these guys moving over. So red shirt at 11, and you've got the sophomores at 19, the juniors at 16, the seniors at 17 of them. Greg the Valentine, what is that? Greg the Hitman Hart. No, that was I forgot your name, bro. But you'll be all right. But that's the thing is you've got that breakdown is something I keep up with pretty well. It's Greg Valentine. That's who that was. So it was a big, obviously, unless you're a total zombie and you were my age, you were a wrestling fan as you were growing up because there wasn't much else to do on Saturday mornings. So, but when you look at this, what they've got. Losing Cade Mays as someone, Silent Chaos has been very active in this one. But when you look at what they've got, they have a lot of the pieces to the puzzle. Sometimes you just need it to come together the right way. And losing out on the Hammer, that's right. So Greg the Hammer Valentine. So sometimes when you lose out on the spring, that's not ideal for Georgia. For Clemson, it doesn't matter. They know their quarterback. They know a lot of things. They understand their situation. Georgia, they got a couple of moving parts that are a little odd. So does Alabama. To some degree, so does Auburn because they have a new coordinator there. So certain schools are better equipped for this, but you also have to wonder which coaches are best position for sudden change because this is sudden change. This is as sudden a change as we have seen since I guess 9/11. I mean, the financial crisis, no one was worried about, if you were going to play a football game or if you could go outside. 9/11, we were pretty freaked out for a while. I would say years, plural. This, I don't like people touching my hands now. I just don't, I'm not about that anymore. Like, don't. And I usually have no problem shaking hands with people, but now, I'm like probably y'all are the same way, freaked out. But we will get through this. I'm not panicking or anything like that. I call it like I see it as it stands in the moment. And my non-medical, if you want to call it optimistic view, I think that Georgia will be playing like everyone else in college football in the fall. I want to see where we're at on the 4th of July I want people who are watching this, probably a couple thousand maybe people that watch this over time. I want them to do like we're doing, kind of chill out at home. If you got to go work, if you're in medical, God bless you. We need you now. But if you don't, you're just going to have to deal with the kids slinging the shit for 12 hours. And that's, we're going to have each other's backs on this because that's what we're dealing with. We get through it and we get to the fourth and then we'll see, right? Because then by the fourth, you still have a long time before the games are played. You have 2 full months before you actually play a football game. So, this is certainly life or death, but college football sometimes feels like it's more important than life or death. And I mean, I'm joking, but I'm sort of not in a way because people take it very seriously. And I guarantee you, if I were to poll y'all in the chat and ask you how many of y'all would stay in your house for the next month if you knew that you would have college football and you'd stay in your house, and how many of you would leave the house if you were cool with missing the season, I guarantee you that that y'all will all stay in your house for sure. A couple of questions talking about Florida's losses. I do think that Florida has some issues, generally speaking, like a lot of the SEC schools. It will be curious to see how they move forward with transition on the defensive line specifically, but also at receiver. And the quarterback is a good quarterback, but he's not overly skilled. I mean, he's not a guy that you're scared to death of. He is not Joe Burrow. All right, so you can kind of deal with some of those things. My favorite wrestlers growing up were Rock and Roll Express. I would say that was probably my favorite as a child, and then getting more to college age was Shawn Michaels. Other questions here. Yes, Georgia graduation has been canceled from what I understand. I don't think Georgia's going to really change who they are. I think that they're going to still try to run the ball. They're going to try to throw it every now and then. But when they throw it this time, it very well could not be these side-to-side deals. It might be more explosive stuff, which means you're taking more risk. But Georgia, you could see last year, y'all, that Georgia was not explosive the way you needed them to be, certainly going into the Notre Dame game. With the Vanderbilt game, they were getting, 10-yard plays. That's not explosion to me. That is, churning things up. That's not explosion to me. Explosion are 80-yard plays. You've got guys like Blaylock, Robertson, Cook, to some degree Zamira. And last year you had Swift. I mean, how many long runs did Swift have last year? They were not explosive in the way that you kind of got used to watching Bobo, or even the 2017 or 18 teams. Those teams were explosive. 2019 was straight up about the defense. That was what they were about. That was, that was how they made their money, for lack of a better term. Here's a question. Will ticket prices in 2020 season stay the same or go up or down? They are never going down. Okay? Never. That is not happening. Not in the current climate. Even in this current climate, they're not going to go down. So the Athletic Association sent something out earlier today talking about if you need to kind of get on a payment system to pay for the tickets because of this economic stuff that's going on, you need to call them or email them. That's something that Georgia, I don't want to speak for Georgia, that's something they can do, but they did make that clear. Secondly, in terms of the prices going up or down, I'm not aware that they went up. I think they're the same as they were in 2019. If someone wants to correct me with that, they can do so. If someone from Georgia is watching, they can text me and I will correct that. But I'm not aware that they went up, not that I'm aware of. They're not going to go down. So that's just something that is not going to happen. So here's a sort of statement. I don't know. Call it whatever coach speak jargon like explosive, but the fact is you have to score an average 39 points a game to win the title. Well, I don't know if you've got stuff to back that up or not. That seems a little high, but you're not going to score typically 39 points in a championship game. Now, the last 2 championship games, that happened. And more offense is like exploding, no question. But you got to stop people. When you got to stop them, you got to stop them. And the same thing goes that way. You got to score, you got to score. But like, and you know, it's just like in basketball. You can run up and down the court all you want to. It's awesome. It's a fun way to play basketball. But at some stage, you have to play half-court offense. You have to get down and play half-court defense. In games that matter, you're going to have to defeat your foe, not by outscoring them. Clemson had a very good defense. That's why they played in the national championship game. They barely got past Ohio State. They did not. I'm not remembering the scores off the top of my head, but I do not think it was in the 40s or the upper 30s. So they got there because their defense made the plays at the end of the game, and you know Justin threw that interception too. But that's part of the defense. So if you want to talk about scoring points and ignoring defense, I will give you Oklahoma, and I will give you getting their ass beat every single time they get in the college football playoff. They are ejected. They have not won a game yet. So that's not going to work. Ohio State, great defense. Clemson, great defense. LSU, not great defense, but their offense was so good it masked their defense. And their defense wasn't that bad by the end of the year. Let's see. Some more questions about South Carolina. Did the South Carolina Gamecocks leave you some hedges that they took in 2019? I don't really have a witty comeback for that other than South Carolina was not a good football team. You know they were not a good football team. I know they were not a good football team. And it just goes to show you cannot turn the ball over 4 times and expect to win a football game. South Carolina was not good. But they have a good win, but the rest of their season was in the toilet, period. Talking about college football has changed. Yes, it has. And you do have to, but you got to score. But you've got to stop people. If you don't stop people, you're just, you know, it's not happenstance that 2 of the teams that were in the college football playoff had superb defenses, and one of them had one that was just straight up terrible, and they limped their way in. I mean, Oklahoma, as much grief as I have given the ACC and Clemson for that whole thing, the Big 12 is not much better. The Pac-12 is garbage. The ACC is garbage with the exception of Clemson. The Big 12 is not great. You know, Georgia beat Baylor, the second best team in that league that barely lost to Oklahoma. Georgia beat them pretty bad in the Sugar Bowl. And that was with a lot of the very good players that Georgia had. Andrew Thomas, Isaiah Wilson, you know, J.R. Reed didn't play. DeAndre Swift barely played. They totally owned Baylor in every way. And that just was just not a close game. So that league is bad. And it's got, you know, Oklahoma is a legit team just the way that Clemson is. But who is in that league otherwise? I mean, Baylor was good last year, no doubt a top 10 team. But apparently the difference between a top 10 SEC team and a top 10 Big 10 team, Big 12 team, excuse me, way too many bigs, is not really close. So I think the big thing is let's stick to this together. I'll be doing these chats every night. Y'all come with the questions. Dean Legge from Dawg Post, making you a smarter Georgia fan. We'll see you on the other side.